Imagine waking up one morning and realizing your money no longer belongs to you in the way you thought it did. Your bank balance still shows a number. Your card still fits in your wallet. But somewhere far away, with a single signature, that money can be frozen, slowed, redirected, or turned against you. Not because you committed a crime. Not because you were convicted in a court, but because the rules changed quietly, and most people never noticed. This is the story of how a single law helped turn money into a weapon, and why it still shapes your life today in ways you probably don't see. For most of human history, power looked obvious. Kings used armies. Empires used violence. Control was loud. You could hear it coming. But modern power learned something far more effective. If you can control money, you can control behavior without firing a single shot. You don't need tanks if you can shut down access to banks. You don't need soldiers if you can collapse trade, freeze assets, and isolate entire populations financially. And that shift didn't happen by accident. It was legalized. In the United States, one law quietly changed the nature of economic power. It gave the government the authority to treat money not just as a medium of exchange, but as a strategic tool, a lever, a pressure point. Officially, it was framed as protection. Protection against foreign threats, hostile governments, and national emergencies. Unofficially, it created a system where financial control could replace physical force. This law allowed the government to declare an economic emergency and, with that declaration, gain extraordinary powers over money. Bank accounts could be frozen, transactions could be blocked, entire countries could be cut off from the global financial system, companies could be punished for doing business with the wrong people. And all of this could happen without Congress voting each time, without trials, and often without public debate. At first, most Americans didn't care. Why would they? The targets were usually far away, foreign governments, sanctioned nations, names you only heard on the news. It felt distant, technical, almost boring. But the real impact wasn't about those targets. It was about setting a precedent. Once you establish that money can be weaponized against them, it's only a matter of time before the same system shapes the lives of us. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Money feels private, but it's not. Every digital dollar exists inside a system. Banks, payment processors, clearinghouses, regulators. When a law gives the state influence over that system, your financial freedom becomes conditional. You can earn money, save money, invest money, but only as long as you remain inside the acceptable boundaries of the system. Step outside, and the system doesn't argue with you. It simply stops working. This is what makes financial power so effective. There's no spectacle, no dramatic confrontation, just a quiet notification that a transaction failed, an account under review, access temporarily restricted. Most people don't protest when this happens. They panic, they comply, they adjust their behavior, and that is exactly the point. Over time, this law normalized the idea that economic punishment is a legitimate first response, not a last resort. Instead of diplomacy, sanctions. Instead of negotiation, asset freezes. Instead of accountability, financial isolation. And because it happens through spreadsheets and software, it feels clean, clinical, almost invisible. But invisibility doesn't mean harmless. When money becomes a weapon, it doesn't just hit governments. It hits workers, families, small businesses, and retirees. Inflation spikes when supply chains break. Jobs disappear when companies lose access to markets. Savings lose value when currencies weaken under pressure. The pain is real, even if the cause feels abstract. Now think about this from another angle. If money can be weaponized internationally, it can be conditioned domestically. Financial surveillance grows quietly under the promise of security and compliance. Transactions are monitored, patterns are analyzed, risk scores are calculated. Not because you did something wrong, but because the system is designed to watch first and ask questions later. This doesn't mean there's a villain pressing a button to ruin lives. That's the wrong way to see it. The real danger is systemic. Once a tool exists, it will be used. Once a power is normalized, it will expand. That's how systems work. Not through conspiracy, but through incentives. Banks want to avoid risk, so they overcomply. Companies want to avoid penalties, so they self-censor. Individuals want stability, so they stay quiet. Slowly, the boundaries of acceptable behavior narrow, not by law alone, but by financial pressure. And here's where it becomes personal for you. The average American believes freedom is protected by the Constitution, by courts, by elections, and those things matter. But in daily life, your freedom is often filtered through your access to money. Can you pay rent? Can you move funds? Can you operate a business? Can you donate? Can you travel? When those abilities depend on centralized systems governed by emergency powers, freedom becomes fragile in ways most people never consider. This is why the most powerful laws are rarely the loud ones. They don't announce themselves with dramatic speeches. They're written in technical language, passed during moments of fear, renewed quietly year after year. And before anyone notices, they reshape the relationship between citizens, money, and power. If this feels unsettling, it should. Not because you're in immediate danger, but because awareness is the first line of defense. Systems thrive on ignorance. They weaken under understanding. When you see money not just as cash or numbers, but as a tool of influence, your perspective changes. You start asking better questions. You pay attention to how rules shift during crises. You notice who gains flexibility and who loses it. This is not a call to panic, it's a call to think clearly. Financial systems are not neutral. Laws are not just words. They are mechanisms that shape behavior at scale. And once you recognize that, you stop taking stability for granted. You start valuing resilience over comfort. At Silent Collapse, this is what we focus on. The quiet changes, the invisible shifts, the rules that don't make headlines but redefine reality.